A faint drizzle falls over the chalky cliffs of Normandy. June 7, 1944. The sea is grey and restless, tossing debris from the day before onto the scarred beaches below. The smell of cordite and churned sand hangs thick in the air, mixing with the bitter tang of salt. Somewhere in the distance, a Sherman tank's engine coughs and roars, echoing across the hedgerows. Men huddle behind shattered walls, rifles clutched, eyes wide. The world expects hesitation. The world expects failure. And yet, something unseen begins to stir. The American soldiers who stepped ashore yesterday, dismissed as raw, inexperienced, and untested, are not the men the world thinks they are. Across these battered fields and tangled hedgerows, a quiet contradiction is taking shape. The same army deemed unprepared for modern war is about to adapt faster than any other Allied force, and perhaps faster than any army in history. It is not mere coincidence. It is not sheer luck. It is the unfolding story of an army learning while fighting, transforming while bleeding, improvising while under fire. For decades, historians, journalists, and even some contemporaries assumed that experience, age, and tradition defined battlefield success. The British Army, centuries old, would be methodical and disciplined. The German Wehrmacht, veterans of blitzkrieg campaigns, would be unstoppable. The Soviet Red Army, massive and relentless, would overwhelm through sheer force. By contrast, American forces were young, inexperienced, and raw. Many soldiers had never fired a weapon in anger. Many officers were recently promoted civilians, tested in peacetime exercises, not the chaos of real battle. Equipment was abundant, yes, but often unproven in combat. Plans were precise on paper, but they would collide with the unpredictable realities of hedgerows, jungles, deserts, and cities. The expectation was clear: they would stumble, falter, and learn slowly, if at all. Yet, as the first columns moved inland from the beaches of Normandy, as trucks groaned along newly built supply routes, as engineers, medics, and mechanics improvised solutions in real time, it became evident that the old assumptions were wrong. Introducing both sides of the conflict. On one side, the Axis powers, veterans of decades of militarization, seasoned tacticians, masters of doctrine. They fought with precision and experience, relying on hierarchy, discipline, and carefully drilled routines. They expected predictability in their enemy. On the other side, the Americans, citizen soldiers drawn from farms, factories, and city streets, untested in the crucible of modern mechanized warfare, yet brimming with ingenuity, adaptability, and a democratic spirit that allowed ideas to flow up and down the chain of command without hesitation. It is here, in this clash of preparation versus improvisation, tradition versus innovation, rigidity versus adaptability, that the story unfolds. The United States entered World War II late, December 7, 1941, following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Its military, though rapidly expanding, was modest compared to Europe's great powers. In 1939, the U.S. Army ranked 19th in the world, with just under 200,000 active-duty personnel. Equipment was limited, training uneven, and doctrine largely untested in large-scale, modern combat. Yet by 1942, the industrial and cultural capacity of the nation became apparent. Factories were transformed into war machines, millions of men and women mobilized to produce vehicles, weapons, and ammunition at an unprecedented pace. Still, production alone could not guarantee battlefield success. American forces would face their first true test in North Africa at Kasserine Pass, where inexperience nearly led to disaster. The humiliation of Kasserine Pass, units collapsing under German assault, officers failing to coordinate, soldiers unsure of tactics, became the crucible of transformation. Unlike many armies, the U.S. military did not simply absorb the lesson and return to business as usual. It institutionalized learning. After-action reports became tools for immediate improvement. Officers were replaced. Doctrine was rewritten. Training was intensified. By the time the Allied forces prepared for Operation Overlord in 1944, the American Army was a new entity, still young, still raw in parts, but capable of adjusting with unprecedented speed under fire. In Normandy, as dawn breaks on June 7, 1944, the chaos of war is everywhere. The roar of tanks fills the air, punctuated by the sharp crack of rifle fire. Soldiers scramble through mud and shattered hedgerows, faces streaked with sweat and blood. Engineers wield welding torches to retrofit tanks into hedgerow-breaching rhinos. Medics drag the wounded to makeshift aid stations in barns and ruined cottages. Quartermasters coordinate supply lines that stretch for miles, trucks rumbling along narrow roads, carrying ammunition, food, and fuel for an army learning faster than anyone expected. Amid this sensory storm, the Americans are not merely surviving, they are adapting, improvising, and learning with every movement, every mistake, every success. Thesis statement. The story of why American forces adjusted faster than any other Allied army is not simply a tale of superior numbers, better equipment, or even courage. It is the story of an army, and a society, capable of learning in real time. It is a story of human ingenuity, cultural flexibility, and a collective willingness to admit mistakes, adapt, and overcome. Through innovation in tactics, logistics, and leadership, the Americans transformed the chaos of war into a laboratory for rapid evolution. The lessons learned in North Africa, Sicily, Normandy, and the Pacific would not only win battles, they would redefine the nature of modern warfare. This documentary will trace the transformation, the missteps and lessons of early battles, the innovations forged under fire, the human stories of soldiers improvising to survive, and the enduring impact of adaptability as a defining characteristic of American military power. The message is clear: the strongest army is not the one that begins perfect, but the one that can change faster than its enemy, faster than its allies, and faster than history itself expects. Before the beaches of Normandy, before the island-hopping campaigns across the Pacific, before the armored thrusts sweeping through France, the American army was small, inexperienced, and ill-prepared for the scale of modern war. In 1939, when Hitler's armies carved through Europe and Japan expanded in the Pacific, the United States maintained fewer than 190,000 active-duty soldiers. Equipment was outdated, tanks were underpowered, and officers were largely veterans of a previous war. The peacetime army emphasized ceremony and drills over improvisation, leaving it rigid and untested. General George C. Marshall, appointed Army Chief of Staff in 1939, recognized the glaring gap between potential and readiness. The U.S. had the capacity to produce a powerful army, but capacity alone was not enough. It had to be transformed, rapidly. The initial mobilization brought in men from farms, factories, and urban neighborhoods. Young, eager, and untested, they were thrust into a world of mechanized warfare for which no manual had prepared them. Many officers were promoted from civilian life, chosen for intellect or leadership, but inexperienced in command under fire. Then came the first real test: North Africa, 1942, Kasserine Pass. Kasserine Pass was meant to be a proving ground, an American advance against Axis forces in Tunisia. But it became a nightmare. American troops stumbled against seasoned German panzer divisions. Communications failed. Infantry hesitated. Tank units advanced without coordination. Commanders misjudged the enemy's tactics. A private wrote in his diary, "Everything fell apart. Officers froze. Men panicked. The Germans were everywhere, and we didn't know where to go. We were supposed to be ready. We weren't." The losses were staggering: more than 6,000 casualties, hundreds of tanks and vehicles destroyed, confidence shattered. Yet Kasserine Pass became the crucible of transformation. Unlike many armies, the U.S. Army did not simply accept defeat. After-action reports dissected every failure. Officers were replaced. Training programs were revamped. Doctrine was rewritten. The culture of rapid learning was born in fire. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley later reflected, "We learned more in 3 days at Kasserine than in years of peacetime training." This willingness to admit error and adapt would define the American forces in the campaigns to come. By the time of Operation Overlord in June 1944, the American army had absorbed its lessons and begun to evolve rapidly. Normandy would test its ability to adapt under fire. The terrain itself was a formidable enemy. The Norman hedgerows, thick walls of earth and vegetation, stymied tanks and obstructed infantry. Linear assaults failed repeatedly. Casualties mounted. Traditional doctrine offered no solution. Innovation emerged from necessity. Private mechanics and engineers retrofitted Sherman tanks with steel tusks to pierce hedgerows, creating the Rhino tank. The design spread across divisions in days. The enemy was stunned when armored units began surging through obstacles once considered impassable. Infantry squads adapted too. Linear formations gave way to small, flexible teams using fire and maneuver tactics. Officers encouraged input from lower ranks. Feedback traveled rapidly up and down the chain of command, allowing changes in real time. The same pattern appeared in logistics. Supply lines stretched from Normandy's beaches to forward units. Roads clogged, vehicles broke down, ammunition ran low. Quartermasters, learning as they went, established improvised supply dumps, mobile repair units, and the early networks that would evolve into the Red Ball Express. Every solution was born from necessity, and necessity drove adaptation faster than doctrine or tradition could. The difference between the Americans and their allies became apparent during the breakout from Normandy. British forces. Disciplined, methodical, careful. Plans were precise, adaptation required approval. Movement was deliberate, slower to respond to unexpected challenges. Soviet forces. Massive, overwhelming, politically supervised. Adaptation was possible but hampered by bureaucracy. Change came slowly. American forces. Fast, flexible, decentralized. Junior officers empowered. Experimentation encouraged. Doctrine rewritten in real time. A German officer captured near St. Lo remarked. The Americans fight like water, flowing, shifting, filling every crack in our defense. They change faster than we can react. A British colonel observed. They make mistakes, grand mistakes, but they recover within hours. That is their true strength. The structural advantage of the American forces was clear. Their equipment was standardized, reparable by any mechanic. Radios, tanks, and artillery units were designed for quick fixes and modular upgrades. Coupled with decentralized command, this allowed rapid learning at a scale no other army could match. Stories from the front reveal how adaptation was driven by human ingenuity. A corporal in the 4th Infantry Division wrote, "Every night we talk about what went wrong. No one is afraid to say the lieutenant messed up. Next morning, we try the new way. It feels like we're inventing the war as we go." A tank commander at Bastogne recalled. Orders changed before the old ones made sense. We were always adjusting, new formations, new radio procedures, new tactics. Sometimes it felt crazy, but it kept us alive. From the Pacific, a Marine sergeant on Polilliu wrote. The enemy changes every week. So do we. They dig deeper, we blast deeper. They hide in the jungle, we burn new trails. It's like two beasts evolving in the same cage. Even in Washington, analysts were astonished. Reports from Europe often contradicted manuals still being printed. By the time our doctrine arrives in the field has moved on, noted a colonel in the War Department. Adaptation was not theoretical, it was survival. Every soldier understood that yesterday's lesson could save tomorrow's life. Adaptation came at a cost. The hedgerow battles alone produced 125,000 American casualties. North Africa cost 18,500. The Pacific Islands exacted tens of thousands more. Yet the results were undeniable. The U.S. Army executed complex, synchronized operations across continents and oceans, entire divisions coordinated with air, land, and naval forces, sometimes over 1 million troops and 20,000 vehicles in a single theater. Engineers, medics, and logistics officers turned setbacks into innovations, producing the rapid supply chains and tactical adjustments that defined modern warfare. During the Battle of the Bulge, when German forces launched a surprise attack, American units absorbed the shock and reorganized rapidly, even in isolated positions. They adapted quickly to harsh weather, poor visibility, and enemy tactics. A German general later said, "We had the experience. The Americans had the momentum. We slowed, they accelerated." In the Pacific, American forces evolved as Japanese tactics shifted, adjusting bombardment patterns, developing amphibious vehicles, and innovating close air support coordination. The enemy could respond, but lacked the industrial base and decentralized leadership to match the speed of American adaptation. Adaptation became a weapon more powerful than artillery, armor, or air power. By 1945, the American Army was unrecognizable from the one that existed in 1941. It was no longer hesitant, inexperienced, or rigid. It had become an evolving, learning force, capable of changing faster than any enemy or ally. Other armies could match bravery or firepower. Few could match flexibility. None could match the speed of learning. The consequences were profound. Post-war doctrine emphasized decentralized leadership, initiative, and combined arms flexibility. Technological innovation became a permanent priority in peacetime. Lessons from wartime improvisation shaped Cold War logistics, global power projection, and even civilian industrial practices. At its core, this transformation revealed a deeper truth. The strength of a democratic society lies in its ability to think collectively, adapt quickly, and transform necessity into innovation. American forces in World War II did not just win battles, they redefined modern warfare. Their legacy is measured not only in victories but in the philosophy of rapid, flexible, and continuous. A quiet dusk settles over Europe. The roar of guns has faded. The beaches of Normandy are empty now, save for the scattered debris of a war that reshaped the world. Across the forests of the Ardennes, the roads of France, and the islands of the Pacific, the echoes of combat linger in the wind, in the scars etched into the earth, in the memories of those who survived. And into this silence comes the question that defines the legacy of this army. The reveal of truth. When World War II ended, the United States emerged not only as a victor but as a nation that had proven the power of adaptability. Its army had crossed continents, oceans, deserts, and jungles. It had built supply chains spanning thousands of miles. It had invented new weapons, new tactics, and new ways of thinking in the middle of combat. But the greatest transformation was invisible. It existed in mindset, in the willingness of soldiers and commanders alike to admit mistakes, to experiment, and to improve constantly. The world had expected that experience and tradition would determine victory. Instead, adaptability became the decisive factor. Experience mattered less than the ability to reinvent in real time. The American Army demonstrated that survival depended not on what you know but on how quickly you can change. After the war, the lessons learned were institutionalized. The U.S. military became a laboratory for innovation. Decentralized leadership empowered young officers and soldiers to make decisions. Combined arms doctrine integrated air, land, and sea forces with fluid coordination. Rapid logistical systems enabled global power projection. Technological innovation became a permanent wartime and peacetime priority. The lessons of the battlefield influenced the post-war era far beyond military strategy. Industrial production, engineering, education, and research embraced the ethos of rapid learning and problem-solving. The same principles that allowed American soldiers to improvise in Normandy and the Pacific fueled the space race, the rise of mass industry, and the development of modern technology. Adaptability became more than a military tactic, it became a cultural and societal value. The irony, what the defeated learned. In the ruins of Germany and Japan, analysts studied the victorious Americans with astonishment. Questions haunted them. How did the Americans move so fast? How did they adapt so completely? How did they outperform armies with centuries of tradition? The answers were uncomfortable truths. German officers realized that their tactical brilliance and experience were no match for an army that could rethink its approach daily. Japanese commanders discovered that courage, discipline, and sacrifice could not outpace the speed of innovation. The supposedly inexperienced Americans had turned adaptability itself into a decisive weapon. The moral irony is clear: those who relied on tradition and rigidity were defeated by those willing to change. A lasting image, the symbol of adaptation. In the National Archives, a photograph captures the essence of this transformation. A group of American soldiers sits atop a Sherman tank retrofitted with hedgerow-breaching tusks, the Rhino tank, faces streaked with mud and sweat. One soldier holds a welding torch, another clutches a notebook filled with sketches and field notes. Behind them, smoke rises over the hedgerows, a battlefield transformed by ingenuity. This image is more than a historical artifact. It is a symbol of what the American Army became. A force defined not by perfection, but by its ability to change, learn, and survive. Human voices, reflections from the front. Soldiers wrote, spoke, and remembered in ways that capture the human essence of adaptation. A lieutenant in the 4th Infantry Division reflected. Every day we learned something new, sometimes from an officer, sometimes from a private, sometimes from the enemy himself. We didn't win because we started better. We won because we refused to stay the same. A Marine sergeant in the Pacific. We changed every time the enemy changed. Every lesson was a weapon. Every failure was a teacher. We adapted, or we died. These voices reveal a truth deeper than strategy: victory comes not from static strength, but from the courage to evolve. The universal truth, lessons for today. The story of American adaptation in World War II is more than a military lesson. It is a story about human resilience, ingenuity, and the capacity to transform under pressure. In any era, on the battlefield, in society, or in personal life, the ability to adapt determines survival and success. Technology, knowledge, and even bravery are secondary to flexibility, learning, and innovation. The soldiers of World War II discovered this in the harshest classroom imaginable. Their evolution reshaped nations, warfare, and the modern world. And their lesson endures. The strongest force is not the one that begins perfect, but the one that changes faster than the world around it. Closing thoughts. As the sun sets over Europe, as forests regrow and cities rebuild, the story lingers. The hedgerows, the Pacific Islands, the deserts, and the cities, all bear silent witness to a lesson forged in chaos. Adaptability is the ultimate weapon. The American soldiers who learned to change while fighting discovered that survival and victory demanded more than courage, training, or numbers. They discovered a principle that transcends war. We succeed not by clinging to the familiar, but by becoming what the moment requires. In the end, the legacy of the American Army in World War II is both simple and profound. Human ingenuity, collective learning, and relentless adaptation are more powerful than any tank, plane, or gun. And that truth, etched in mud, blood, and steel, resonates as clearly today as it did on the battlefields of 1944 and 1945.